Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Creative Kindergarten Podcast. My name is Amanda, and I'm an early childhood educator in Ontario, Canada. I'm working for a school board as an early childhood educator facilitator this year, but I have spent 5 years in a full day kindergarten classroom. And I love sharing some of the things that I've learned from working over the years in a full day kindergarten classroom with all of you with this podcast. And today I'm actually answering a question that one of my listeners sent me. And I'm so glad that they reached out to me and asked me this so that I could answer it in this episode's podcast. So, what they asked me was, I would love to hear a podcast on how you juggle everything: planning, centers, inquiry, documenting, being aware of each child's skill level, and all of our other duties. So, as an educator in a full day kindergarten classroom, there is so much to do, and I want to spend a bit of time during this podcast to let you know what I did when I was in a kindergarten classroom. So, thank you for listening. That is such a great question. I know that being in a classroom of any grade is really difficult. Being in a kindergarten classroom just adds a whole other level to it. Even though we have 2 educators in our kindergarten classrooms, it seems like there's never enough time in the day. And I'm going to start off by saying that I do not have all the answers for this, because this is something that every year we struggled with. Every year my teaching partner and I would say, oh, there's just not enough time in the day. There's not enough days in the week to get done everything that we need to get done. It's just not possible. So one of my biggest tips, and I'm going to start off by saying this at the very beginning, is that you're not going to be able to do it all the time. It's impossible. If you have 32 kids in your class, which some of them classrooms in Ontario do, you're not going to be able to do everything all the time, and that is okay. You're not Superman or Superwoman. Some things are just not going to get done. Make sure that the important things are done. Your kids in your classroom are safe and well taken care of. If you don't get everything else done every week, that's okay. We're not going to be able to do everything all the time, especially when there's just some weeks when the week just gets away from us. There's like a billion things happening, and you know what? You didn't get a chance to get to documenting everything that you wanted to. You didn't get to do the art projects that you wanted to with the kids. You didn't get a chance to do the outdoor exploration that you had planned. That's okay. Just put it to the next week, unless it's absolutely necessary to get it done at a particular time, like you have a deadline you need to reach. Just push it to the next week. Like, don't overstress yourself with having to get everything done all the time. That pushes so much stress onto yourself, onto your teaching partner, and then it trickles down to the kids. Like, the kids will notice when you're feeling that stress, that overwhelm, like that I need to get everything done, that kind of energy that you get when that happens. I know I get this really vibey energy when I know I have to get something done and it's not getting done, and I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to get things done. The kids feed off of that, and then their energy is off the charts, and then you're really not getting anything done. So just give yourself permission and know that it's not all going to get done, and that's okay. Even if your next door neighbor, your kindergarten team next door to you, looks like they've got all their stuff together, yeah, let them look like that. Let them be the ones that are stressing about everything getting done. You be the classroom where the kids are excited to come in. They're having so much fun. They're not feeling stressed that they have to get things done. And take care of what you need to do. Make sure you're providing a great environment for your students. You're providing some great teaching moments for your students. And don't worry about the little things. Let them go. That's my number one piece of advice. There are some things that you just have to let go. The next piece of advice that I have for you, and it's not really advice, it's just kind of like something that you need to know, I guess, is that it gets easier. If you're in your first year of kindergarten and you're like, how do we get this all done? How do you get new math centers and literacy centers done for every week? How do you do all the documenting? How do you do all the planning? Yeah, it's because it's been like, I did it for 5 years, and a lot of this stuff is already done, and I'm just taking stuff that I did 2 years ago and redoing them. That's how sometimes it just gets done. It's because it was already done 2 years ago and I'm just pulling it out and adding it into the program. And so that's one of the biggest things, is that it's just a buildup over time of resources and of centers and of activities and of knowledge that just you don't have your first year, unfortunately. And I guess, yeah, the first and second year of being in kindergarten is probably the hardest, because you're constantly feeling like you have to come up with new ideas, new centers. You're trying to follow lines of inquiry, but then you have to keep planning for that. And how do you have so much time to plan? And how do I come up with all of these things? Well, it's not going to happen your first year. And what you're going to have to do is either lean on a teaching team at your school or out there in the world who has done it before, and like ask them for advice, ask them for ideas, bounce ideas off of them. Just go to them. Go to those experts that are in your building. Go to those experts that you have friends with on Facebook. Go to those experts. They will share. Most of ECEs are more than willing to share their expertise, more than willing to share their experiences, so that you're taking some of that off of yourself. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. It's probably already been done. Your kids are interested in whatever they're interested. Let's say it's worms. Like, you don't have to like worry so much about it. It's already out there. Go to people for advice. Ask your students what they want to do, because your students are also experts in what they're interested in, because that's who is leading the program. It's your students. And lean on those other experts in your life to help you out. Falling down the rabbit hole of Pinterest is dangerous, because you get to see all these amazing ideas that are out there, all these awesome things that are happening, and you're like, why am I not able to get all this done? Well, because it's Pinterest, and that's a collaboration between teachers all around the world that are putting all their ideas in one place and making you feel like they're doing everything, when no, they did one thing. You're just seeing things from like 30 other people at the same time. So falling down the Pinterest rabbit hole, though it is very useful and helpful to look at Pinterest for ideas and inspiration, don't feel like you have to do everything you see. Like, it's not going to happen. And so that's my second piece of advice. Lean on the expertise of others in the building. Lean on the expertise of other ECEs or kindergarten teachers that are in your district or your school board, and work in a collaborative manner. Like, if there's 4 kindergarten classrooms in your school and you're not leaning on others to help you, like, you're doing yourself a disservice. You want to go to those people. You want to exchange materials with those people, because it's already done for you. Like, they might already have something that meets the needs of your students. You don't have to run around trying to find it. As for planning, so as an early childhood educator in full day kindergarten in the school board that I work at, we get a half an hour of planning time paid per day. Is this enough time? No, it's definitely not enough time. A half an hour of planning every day is hardly no time at all to get anything done. By the time you get started, like, you're already done your half an hour planning time. And to be honest with you, and a lot of people will tell you not to do this, but this is just how I work, I would go in early. I would have to go in early to start my day running. I would feel like I'm playing catch up all day. So for my own mental well-being, my own mental health, I had to go in earlier than just a half an hour before school started, just so I could get settled in and get myself ready for the day. And that's just how I function. Like, I cannot go in right before school starts and just flow into the day. I would have a really hard time with that. And I know that's just not how I work. And that's my personal thing. I'm not telling you, you need to go in early or stay late. That's just how I feel. Like, if you feel like getting your day started by spending some extra time at home, working out or drinking your coffee at home works better for you, or you have to because you have to drop your kids off at daycare, or you have to do a million other things in the morning, that's okay. But for me personally, I had to go in early, and my teaching partner and I would try to get some planning done at the beginning of the day. But of course, there's always people coming into the room talking to you. and people needing to come in and collaborate, which is fine. Like we would have teachers come in and come talk about their day and what's going on. And if we had any ideas, we would share ideas with them. And that's a great collaborative atmosphere. Wouldn't exchange that for the world. But it does make it hard to start planning when you have people coming in and out of your room all morning and you don't get a lot of time to just sit down with your partner and plan for the next few days. So what we found works best for us is just planning on the fly. We would just be like, oh, I have a great idea for something. And then we'd write it in. Or I would write down a whole bunch of ideas. And whenever we had a chance, we would start talking about them. It was kind of not a very structured type of planning time between my last teaching partner and I. It was more of on the fly whenever we had a chance. And that's just what worked for us. We had, like, my teaching partner had been doing kindergarten for, I don't even know how many years, like 10, 11 years at this point. And I'd been doing it for 5. Like, we were able to just work together and just figure out what would work best for us. And we would just get it done. And then what we did was every Friday, students would have like just a free choice playtime. And yes, that is a great opportunity to talk to your students, to get some learning from your students during any kind of free choice, any kind of playtime. But we particularly liked it on a Friday for us just to have a few moments to just go through what the next week was going to look like. So we would plan out our sensory bin, plan out our fine motor, plan out a small world center, and we would just take the little bit of time on a Friday afternoon to just go through what our next week was going to look like. Like, do we have an assembly? Do we need to do this? Whatever. And plug it in to the day plans for the next week, just so that we came to school on Monday on the same page. So that was the thing. We didn't want to go home on Friday night and then spend all weekend trying to plan and do things. Like, Friday was what worked for us, and we would just do it then. Kids would be in the room, but yeah, we're talking about what we're doing next week, kids. Like, you can just go do what you need to do. And of course, we're there and watching them if anything was going on. And if we noticed something awesome happening, yes, we would go over and talk to them. But we kind of just left them to their own devices on Friday afternoon and just use that time to plan with each other. And that's what worked for us. Again, that might not work for you. You might not have a class that you can leave for a half an hour at a time and let them just play and do what they need to do. That if that doesn't work for you, you have to find another time with your teaching partner that works. So if that is closing the door on Friday morning or Thursday morning or Wednesday afternoon, whatever day works for the two of you, just closing your door for a half an hour before school starts or a half an hour after school ends, and just saying, like, we need this time to just focus on planning. And you turn off phones, you do everything you need to do to have no distractions, and you just go into planning mode. Then that's what you need to do, and that's what would work for you and your teaching team. So it's really about finding what works. And if that's the route that you decide to go on, like you're going to go on I'm going to close the door for a half an hour and just plan, I would come with ideas. Like, don't start brainstorming ideas if you only have that 1.5 hour chance per week together. Don't come to that meeting with nothing else planned. I would come with ideas and come with like, oh, I noticed that the kids were talking about, I'm going to go back to my worm example. I was noticing my kids were all over worms this day in the yard. What can we do with that? Don't just come with, I don't know what's happening, because that's not going to be a very productive half hour of planning if you have no idea where to even get started, because it's going to take you a half an hour even to get to where you need to be started. So for planning, do what works for you and your teaching team. I know it's hard. I like to come in early. I didn't mind staying late if we needed to stay late a little bit some days. Most of the time we didn't like to stay late. I was more of an early person. Staying late just was never my jam. I like to just get home at the end of the day. Friday afternoons for intense planning is what worked for us. And yeah, so figure out what works best for you and your teaching partner. As for inquiry, how do you plan for inquiry? Well, we didn't really plan for inquiry, to be honest with you, because it just kind of was a spur of the moment. Hey, this is happening. They're interested in worms. Let's do something with this. And it would just be, we would just follow the children's leads. And when it came to inquiry, we came to the realization, I came to the realization that inquiry doesn't have to be an all-encompassing, all day, all like all centers, all activities have to revolve around the inquiry that the students are interested in. You don't have to transform your classroom just because the kids are interested in worms. If the kids are really interested in worms, I'm doing worms because our kids were all over them last year after it rained. If your kids are really interested in worms, of course, go off of that. When they were playing outside, and I'll just talk about how this worked for our classroom. They were playing outside, they saw worms, they were so interested in worms, they wanted to know more. So as we were playing, they were asking questions. Well, I took out my phone and I started typing into my notes app all of the questions that they were asking. So now we're not having to go sit down in the classroom and say, hey, do you have any questions about worms? Well, no, they were already asking those questions outside. I just wrote them down when they were asking them. And I don't have all the answers for this. Like, I don't know how fast a worm can crawl, but I can look that up later when we're inside and doing a little bit of time researching this together. So do it in the moment. Like, have your phone on you. I know you're not supposed to have your phone on you. I had my phone on me so I could write things down. If you don't work well with having a phone on you, bring out a clipboard and a piece of paper. And if you notice kids asking questions about something, start writing it down. I would never remember to bring a clipboard out. So having my phone in my pocket was the easiest way for me to do this kind of stuff. And then once we came inside, I took all the questions I had on my phone and I wrote them on a whiteboard, and every day we answered a few of those questions. I would get out Google and we would search these questions, and I would say, hey, is this a good answer to this question? Should we write this one in? And we just answered the questions. Did it become a whole huge, like, I transformed my room into a worm sanctuary and we had worms everywhere and everything was all about worms? No, we did a few centers with worms and the kids were all over it, but it doesn't have to be a whole shebang every time they have a question about something. One time a kid asked me about an avocado, and they're like, what's in the middle of your avocado? And I said, oh, it's a seed. And they looked at me like, what? How is that a seed? That doesn't look like a seed. I'm like, they're in their minds are picturing like sunflower seeds. They're tiny, they're small. Like, that's usually what a kid has in their mind about what a seed looks like. Well, this didn't look like that. How is that a seed? So this was around lunchtime, so I pulled up pictures of avocados and how they could grow out of seeds. And then the kid asked me if we could plant the avocado seed, and I looked it up, and you had to like stick toothpicks in it and like put it in water. And then we did that. I just put it on the window ledge and we tried to see if something would grow out of it. Nothing grew out of it, but whatever. Did I have to start a whole avocado unit? No, it was just like that one question. So be aware that just because we're in an inquiry stance doesn't mean that the whole classroom now has to become a space where we're exploring everybody's little inquiry. Like, you give yourself permission that sometimes it's just a question and sometimes you just have to answer a question. Sometimes it's just a wonder and you can do one small thing in your classroom to answer that wonder, to lead it on. And it could be just as simple as putting the avocado seed on your window ledge and seeing if anything grows out of it. I think it's a kind of a misconception that everything has to become an all-encompassing, I have to do everything and anything related to this wonder to answer everything. If the kids are still asking questions, like if she had gone on and on and on about this avocado seed, I probably would have done something more with it, but she just wanted to see if it would grow. Simple. Keep your life simple. But then there's other times when students do get really interested. Like, again, I'm just going to keep using classroom things that happen in my classroom just because that's easier for me to talk about. Other times, like, we did a whole space unit. Our students were so interested in learning about space. That's all they talked about. That's all they wanted to learn about. For like 2 weeks, we did space. We did so many fun things with space. We put sight words on stars and stuck them to the ceiling, and they made telescopes to look at the stars and then wrote them in moon sand that I had made out of just sand and some black paint. And then what you had learned about each of the planets. We were watching videos on each of the planets. They wrote about the planets. My teaching partner at the time, her brother had this like light that had that you would put and then underneath something dark, and then it would like shine what looked like the night sky onto something. So we made this like cave thing on our underneath our teacher desk that kids could crawl under and see the night sky. Like, we went full into space for 2 weeks because that's what the kids were interested in, and they kept asking questions and kept going on and on about space. So we just followed their lead, and every day they were so excited to see what we were doing around space. that was a line of inquiry that lent itself to doing a lot more. And we were able to plan and work collaboratively. And that's when Pinterest was our friend, because I'm not coming up with new space ideas every 2 days for 2 weeks. I just looked it up and I found some awesome ideas. And our kids really loved it. They learned so much about space. They could tell you what a Goldilocks planet was. They could tell you about the red dot, I think on Mars, wherever that red dot is. I don't even remember. They could tell you so much about it by the end of it because they were so interested in it. Do you need to do that for everything? No. Just do that for what they're really interested in, for something that they really enjoy. And to be honest, it kind of just gets easy because they're so like happy to do it and they're so excited to do it and they're so interested in what they're doing that they're not getting bored, and you're not having to switch centers out as often because they're so engaged in what they're doing. So that's my advice. If you're planning for inquiry, follow the students' leads. Don't go crazy on every line of inquiry that they have. Like, pick and choose, like which ones are they really interested in, and then when they're really interested in something, go all in for that one. Like, we did space that last year, and that was probably our biggest inquiry unit because they hadn't been super interested in anything else. Like, they had been interested, but not as invested in other areas of inquiry like they were for space. And most of the class, I would say all of the class, was really interested in it. Like, not all of the class was interested in the avocado seed. So just pick and choose. As for documenting, this one's really easy because I think we overcomplicate documenting in kindergarten. You do not need to take 10 pictures of a kid doing patterns. What you do is you take a picture of the first time a kid does a pattern, or if they're not able to pattern, you take a picture of that. And then when they show some growth in patterning, like 2 weeks later, hey, all of a sudden they weren't able to pattern first week. Now, 2 weeks later, they can make an ABC pattern. Take a picture of those 2 instances. You don't need to take 15 pictures of the kid patterning throughout those 2 weeks of whatever. You just need to take a picture of like where they are and where they go. Make your life easier. Like, don't overcomplicate it. We don't need to take 17 pictures of kids patterning every day. I used an iPad with a OneNote document that my teaching partner and I shared, and I would take a picture of whatever it was they're doing. Each kid had a file in each of the 4 frames. You would pick the frame, take a picture of it, and then you could use voice to text to talk to the iPad, and it would just like type up anything that you were saying. Make your life easy. Hey, that kid can now do an ABC pattern. They weren't able to do that a week ago. So talk about that. Just say, little Polly was able to make an ABC pattern. He showed growth in learning from not being able to pattern. And now as a next step, we want to be able to get him to identify the core. Done. That is some great documentation, some great growth in learning, some great next steps that you've just said. And because you're talking to the iPad, you're also talking to little Polly and saying, hey, great job with your ABC pattern. I love that you were able to tell me that it's an ABC pattern. Next, we're going to work on being able to identify the core. So there you're just doing the assessment loop. You're telling them what they're working on. We're talking about learning goals. We're talking about success criteria. We're doing all of this while documenting. All in the 30 seconds it just took you to take that picture with your iPad. I feel like we do really overcomplicate doing documentation in kindergarten. I know I definitely used to. It was like, you need to take 1 million pictures of everything and like document. No, I just put the iPad. If we saw something really cool happening, a kid was doing something awesome, we took a picture of it. We put it into their OneNote. And when it came time to writing report cards, my teaching partner would pull up the OneNote document. Everything was there, like his growth in learning, the next steps, everything was just sitting there that she could just put into their communication of learning, their report card. That's what we call the report card in Ontario. And then that was done. It made her life easier, made my life easier. And like, we don't need to take so many pictures. If you're taking pictures, but because it's something really cute happening and you really want to put on a slideshow, great. Take a picture for a slideshow, but just don't put it into your documentation. You don't need to write anything to go with that. That's a quick little snap. And then, that's just saved to my camera roll. And when it comes time to doing our end of the year slideshow or sending pictures to family on Remind or putting it on our blog, whatever it is that you do with those pictures, then that's there on your camera roll to do that. But you don't need to write anything to go along with that because that's just a really cute picture of the kids playing with loose parts or whatever it is. So yeah, I would definitely just take a look at how you're documenting and why you're documenting, and really just think about it. Like, is this the best use of my time? Does it have to be so all encompassing that I'm taking like 5 minutes to take pictures and write reports on every little thing that the kid does? Or do I really want to pick and choose my moments and really hone in, focus on a few skills that we're trying to get growth and learning in, and document those kinds of things? Last part of the question was about being aware of each child's skill levels. Again, I feel like this is just something that takes a lot of time to just get used to doing. Maybe the first couple years of kindergarten, I really struggled with like, oh, I don't know where they are with their writing. Oh, I don't know where they are with their math skills. Like, I don't know what these kids should be working on. And then by the 5th year, I was like, oh yeah, little Johnny, he knows how to pattern. He's doing great. Like, we're working on extending patterns with him. I don't know whatever that is. I think that's just something that comes with the experience of being in kindergarten. We did make sure we kept a binder of assessments. So one of the things that we always wanted to make sure we knew when the kids were coming in is how many letters do they know? And don't just assume that because little Polly looks like he's like on the ball with his letters, that he knows all of the uppercase, lowercase letters and their sounds. Like, ask him. Like, we would just take a few weeks at the beginning of the year and get to know each of the kids and get to know, like, do they know how to write their name? Do they know all the letters in the alphabet? What are they reading? Like, get to know each of these kids so that you know how to best meet their needs. And so we would keep all of that inside of a big, huge, like, I think it was like a 3-inch binder, and each kid would have their own tab. And we would just keep little artifacts in there throughout the day. So not throughout the day, throughout the year. And we would keep little artifacts in there. So if I did a guided writing table, I wouldn't keep every piece of guided writing that we did. I would send most of them home, but I would keep one at the beginning of the year. And then if I noticed that they were improving on something, I would keep another one. And I would add a few every couple of months to show that growth and learning with the guided writing that I did. But you don't have to keep every single piece of writing they ever do. Just keep what you notice and when you're talking about next steps. So I think it's just getting to know each of your kids, keeping a OneNote or keeping some paper, not assessment, but paper documentation of what you're doing, so that you can go and look back and say, hey, I can't remember if little Anna knows the letter Z. Let's go look and take a quick look at this and see if she knows it. Like, those kinds of things I would keep, but I think it's just taking the time and getting to know each of your kids. Those are cute, cool little people that you just need to get to know. And like, you don't need to know if they know 24 out of 26 letters of the alphabet. Does that really matter? Like, find out what you really want them to work on. Find out what their growth needs to be and work on that. Like, we're in kindergarten. It's a 2-year program. And it takes some time. It takes a lot of time to get to know each of these kids. Then they change and grow so fast that, hey, if you all of a sudden do need to know whether or not they know how to write their name, like, just do it quickly. Just ask them to write their name. We got them to write their name on everything. And you slowly, and you start to become very aware of where each of your students are. And these, like, we call them natural groups, start to emerge. So if kids are like, there's a natural group of kids that need to work on writing their name. There's a natural group of kids that is learning to identify some letters of the alphabet. There's a natural group of kids that are reading chapter books, like, and each of those kids kind of just becomes groups in your mind, or you can write them if you really need to. And yeah, just go back and review that. I hoped this podcast helped a few of you understand how you can better organize your time, or think about how you organize your time. There's not enough time in a day. Like, it's just so hard. There's just some things that are going to be left by the wayside some weeks, and that's okay. Just give yourself permission. Like, you don't have to be at 110% every day of every week. Give yourself permission to say, hey, this is just not happening this week. We're going to try again next week. And that's okay. We're all just trying our best. We want what's best for our kids. And as long as our kids are loving coming to school, because that's when our number one job in kindergarten is to foster that love of learning in our students, just keep going. Nobody, like, even if they look like they have everything together in the room next door, they probably don't. So don't worry about it. Go ask them if you need help, but make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself, because then it's not fun anymore, and kindergarten needs to be fun, or else you start to lose your marbles pretty quickly. And so I hope this helped a little bit and gave you permission to just leave some of that other stuff behind and find your passion and your love for kindergarten, even though we just don't have enough time to get everything done, and we know that. So I hope you guys have an awesome week. I put out new podcast every Tuesday, so I hope you'll follow me. And so you can send me questions or send me ideas for new podcast episodes, and you can find me on Instagram. It's at Creative Kindergarten Blog on TPT, or you can find me on my blog, which is just creativekindergartenblog.com. You can also find me on YouTube, or you can email me. Whatever it is, just get in contact with me. Let me know what you'd like to hear on my podcast. I'll make sure I leave all of those links that I just told you in the show notes so that you can find me. I love hearing from you guys. I've had a few people like in person come and tell me how much they love listening to this podcast, and it really like made me feel really good, because I do enjoy coming here and talking to you guys, but it kind of feels like I'm talking into a void because there's no back and forth happening. And so if you need to send me a message, please do. I love hearing from you. If I see you in person and you tell me about how much you like the podcast, I really appreciate it so much. It means the world to me. And so I will see you all next week. Have a great one.